Hello, it's Andy here. How are you doing? I'm just in Manchester at the moment, and I just got through the technical rehearsal tonight. Well, they're doing the first act technical rehearsal. We finished it tonight. Today is the 16th of February. It's all going very well. I'd like to dedicate this episode of Musical Talk you're listening to my mother, Irene Gray. She's a massive, massive Jerry Herman fan. I think she'd appreciate it. Enjoy this episode. Jerry Herman, the legend. And I'll speak to you all soon. Hope you're all well, and take it easy. Bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the stages of London, this is Musical Talk, the UK's first independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to Musical Talk. This is me, Nick Hudson. I'm joined here by Tim Saywood.
Hello.
And Thos Ribbits on his electric guitar.
Absolutely. Who's on the drums, Nick, this week?
Andy. You know he's a drummer.
Oh, I didn't actually know that, no.
I've also got a gas-powered ukulele, if anyone's interested.
At least we don't have Bernard Matthews' turkey drums.
No one will now.
No. So this is the 20th episode of Musical Talk.
Do you mind if I twistle you on the corner?
A groundbreaking episode. We are going to feature an interview with Mr. Jerry Herman. Wow.
Himself.
Gosh, the whole prospect of this is just thrilling to me, I have to say.
Yes.
What a great Broadway composer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lyricist, of course.
Hello Dolly.
Hello Dolly, Mame, Dear World, Mack and Mabel.
The Cajo Foal.
Absolutely, Jerry's Girls, which is a compilation. Mrs. Santa Claus,
Hey.
which you can't have failed to have seen over Christmas. A huge body of work. And it'll be great to hear what he has to say.
Mr. Jerry Herman, how are you?
I'm very well and happy to be back in London, even though it's on the phone.
Tell us what you've been up to at the moment, Jerry.
Well, the newest thing in my life is a documentary of my life and my work in the theater. That's been 5 years in the making. A wonderful filmmaker named Amber Edwards has been working on this for the 5 years and has been interviewing people all over the world, actually, and I just got to see it. I had absolutely nothing to do with its being put together, but I just got to see it, and I was very moved and thrilled by it. And I'm going on a little tour with Miss Edwards to publicize it, to have it shown at film festivals and places like that. So I've been busy with that.
Is it rude to ask what that's called, please?
It's called Words and Music by Jerry Herman.
How appropriate.
A film by Amber Edwards.
Do we have a release date for this?
No, it's going to be shown on public television in this country sometime in the fall, but we don't have dates yet.
Well, all the best of luck with that. It sounds brilliant, and I hope it comes over here sometime so we can watch that.
I shall be writing to the BBC.
That would be nice.
I have a one question for you. I have more than one question for you, Jerry, but one of my questions I've been burning to ask is, what was it like working with the, I guess, controversial gentleman David Merrick?
It was a very controversial subject for me as well, because there were times when he was just wonderful to me and wonderful to work with. Let me start by saying he was probably our greatest producer. Today we have 17 names on the top of a playbill or a program, and in those days it said David Merrick presents, and he really was hands-on in every department and did a splendid job, and I have nothing but respect for him. But at the same time, he was very difficult, and he put me through a great deal of stress when we were out of town with Hello Dolly, because I was very young, and he was unsure about whether I could rise to the occasion or not. And so my memories of him are very two-sided. But basically, I have to say that I did 2 shows with him, so that tells you that after the bad experience, I did Mack and Mabel with David producing. So our personal relationship was ended very, very happily, and we became good friends.
Jerry, I'm going to ask you a few questions, if I may, actually probably about your shows in order. And I'd like, if I may, to start immediately with Milk and Honey, of course, which in many ways is your first major Broadway hit. 1961, I think.
1961, and it was a total joy. I had 2 great voices, 2 voices from the Metropolitan Opera, Robert Weedy and Mimi Benzel, singing my songs, and I was really a kid. I was still in my 20s, and we had the wonderful Yiddish theater actress Molly Pecan, a delightful, funny and charming lady, with those 2 gorgeous voices, and a huge production and chorus and wonderful choreography, and it was a very, very exciting time for me because before Milk and Honey, I had only done some off-Broadway shows, and so suddenly I was in the midst of a huge and glorious orchestra, and gorgeous sets and costumes, and it was my coming out party, and it really was wonderful. Lovely experience on all counts. It was very well received in New York and by the critics, and I was nominated for my first Tony Award, which I didn't win, but boy, to be nominated at that tender age was quite a thrill for me.
A dream come true.
Yeah.
Can I ask what you think of the piece now? Because I have to say, it's the elusive one of your scores. It's very hard to come by.
Well, I love it very much. The main problem with it is what has happened with Israel, which at the time I wrote it was 13 years old and an exciting, vibrant, a new country, and because of the controversy there, a lot of theaters have not wanted to go there, and that's the only reason that you haven't seen it or that it hasn't been redone, because it seems to be treading on controversial ground. It really is a charming piece and not in any way militant. Just the opposite. It's just about a group of widows who go to Israel to look for husbands, and a romance that ensues there, and it's just a charming piece with some of my most melodic and lovely melodies, and I'm hoping that the international situation straightens out, not only for obvious reasons, but because I would love it to be accepted in theaters again.
I understand you met Frank Lesser when you were 17, and he encouraged you to continue writing because he obviously saw that you had great talent. But of course, Milk and Honey was on in 1961 when How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying was also on Broadway. I wondered, did you ever meet him again? And if so, did he have anything to say about the fact you were sort of rivals?
Oh, yes, he was a constant supporter of mine. Good. And he would just, even if we just met for a moment at a Tony Award evening or at a party, he would just come over and shake my hand, and I would thank him profusely for letting my parents allow me to go into the business at a tender age, because he encouraged them to encourage me, And he was a great reason that I'm in this business.
Could I ask you now about Hello Dolly, of course, which your name will always be connected with forever, and wonderfully so, if I may say. I believe that you wrote the score originally for Ethel Merman, who unfortunately declined it originally and then took it up rather later in its run. I just wondered, you've obviously had lots of lead women in your in all your musicals.
Yeah.
How do you, as the cast changes, how do you tailor the scores for them?
The wonderful thing about Hello Dolly was we had in succession on Broadway Carol Channing, Ginger Rogers, Betty Grable, Pearl Bailey, Martha Ray, Phyllis Diller, and Ethel Merman. And Mary Martin was doing the same show at the same time in London and in Vietnam. And Eve Arden was doing it in Chicago. And I didn't have to change a note or a word for any of these women because their own personalities melded with Dolly's.
Mm-hmm.
And the show had slightly different a slightly different character with each one of those women without having to change any.
Now, the show was originally going to be called, I believe, Dolly, a Damned Exasperating Woman.
That's right.
Yes, I was going to say, what do you think, how important is a good title?
It's very important. Actually, the show would have been referred to as Dolly, which still is, in many short variety headlines, for example. But the song, Hello Dolly, was intended to be, as it still is, a welcome home to a woman who had locked herself away after the death of her husband, and her return to life, actually. She puts on her feathers and her red dress, which she hasn't worn in a decade or more, and she comes back symbolically to this restaurant where she used to go with her husband, but it's really about returning to the human race. And I never thought that number would be a popular song because it was very 1890s, and it began, hello Harry, well hello Louie. She was talking to her friends, the waiters, and Louis Armstrong turned that song into an international hit and made our producer say to me, well, we have to call the show Hello Dolly because we've got this hit record on our hands. And of course I was delighted by the change, but it really came because of Louis Armstrong's recording.
It's interesting that you were talking about the journey of the central character, Dolly, because obviously that is core to the story, and you brought that out in your score. I believe the story can actually be traced back to 1835 in a book called A Day Well Spent. And how do you select a book, and how can you tell if it's suitable?
In the case of Dolly, David Merrick approached me, and I had never seen any of the earlier versions, and I had not even seen The Matchmaker with Ruth Gordon in the title role when it was a play. And when I had heard about his interest in me, I was very excited because I had written 2 years before, I had written this Israeli operetta because that was what was appropriate for the Milk and Honey material. And I couldn't be more American. My parents were teachers in the New York school system, and I knew that this was right for me, but Mr. Merrick didn't. He only knew my work from Milk and Honey and admired it, and very honestly said to me, I'm not sure whether you're American enough. So I decided that I would take it upon myself to write a few songs. I wrote 4, actually, over the period of a weekend.
Wow.
to be able to show him what my 1890s Americana work would sound like. And I got the job based on that audition that I did with those songs, which I took upon myself to do because having had a hit show running on Broadway, my agents would not have been very happy to have me audition for a new show. But I wanted that job, as the guy says in a chorus line. I knew that I could do that material, and it was a very exciting day when he stood up behind his desk after hearing the songs I had written, and said, "Kid, the show is yours."
That's wonderful. I mean, the fact that you can write 4 great songs in a weekend,
yeah.
is, I have to say, you've knocked us rather dumbstruck here. What were those 4 songs? I mean, they
Put On Your Sunday Clothes was
Right.
the first one I wrote.
How long did that take?
Oh, well, I was working on all the songs simultaneously, so I would write a bit of Put On Your Sunday Clothes, and then I'd go back to dancing the waltz where Dolly teaches Cornelius how to dance, and the whole 14th Street waltzes along with her. And then I'd go to her opening number, I Put My Hand In, which I felt was important for me to show because it tells who she is and what she does for a living, that she matches people up, and that's her, and it shows her garrulousness, that she cannot stop talking. And it was constant work. I worked long into the night, had a few hours sleep, worked the next day, called a lady friend of mine who sang with me, and taught her 2 of the songs so that we could make a better impression than just having me sing the songs myself.
I've heard some of your singing on the album of I think it's Mame.
Yes.
And
yes.
I have to say, I think you sing very well.
Oh, thank you. But I didn't want to bore them with one voice. So that girl that's on the album of Mame, Alice Borden. In fact, I had dinner with her 2 nights ago. Is still one of my very dearest friends, and she was very kind and went with me. And on Monday morning, we had a little show in Mr. Merritt's office.
What was the 4th song, please?
The 4th song was a song for Mrs. Malloy. It was like a little Irish ballad about the fact that she still loved her first love, who was her first husband. And I later got the idea from a line of Thornton Wilder's dialogue about writing a song called Ribbons Down My Back, from a line of dialogue that said, this summer we'll be wearing ribbons down our back to catch a beau, I suppose. And it just gave me such a wonderful picture that I knew I had to write that song. And I replaced the ballad, the Irish ballad, with Ribbons Down My Back.
I have to say that the fact that 3 out of 4 songs written in the weekend made it into the show is just incredible. When people, I have to say this, it's going to sound awfully creepy, but when people say you're a genius, it's very clear that that's the case.
Well, I'll tell you something. When you want something very badly, and you have youth on your side, I don't think I could do it today, but I wanted to assure this man that I was the right person for the job. So a lot of it came from determination and youth, and that's a very powerful combination.
I remember my youth well. Moving on to Mame, which of course was an equally huge hit, 1966, and indeed I believe you'd interpolated some songs into Ben Franklin in Paris in the year before. Must have given you a sense of confidence, which, being on the shoulders, if you like, of Hello Dolly. How did you find that your approach for Mame was different?
Well, it was much, much more sophisticated material. The Dolly material was very corn-fed Americana, and it was, the period was 1890, so I was working within those, restrictions. And Mame suddenly was the 1920s and the 1930s, when this country was just having itself a wonderful celebration, and the Charleston period and the 30s were very glamorous times. So it was a very different approach to songs, and a song like "If He Walked Into My Life" would have been so completely out of place in a show like The Matchmaker. So the style was extremely different. And Mame was, without any question, the happiest and most satisfying experience I ever had in the theater. And Angela Lansbury, your great countryman.
We're very happy to share her with you.
Well, we thank you for her. She is such a great lady, and she is one of my closest friends today. And throughout the period, from 1965 when I first met her. It was just a joyous, joyous time, because when the show tried out in Philadelphia, the first night I knew what I had there. And it was overlong and it needed some judicious cutting. But that's all it needed. I never added anything to it. And we just gently cut it as the performances continued, and we came in with a roaring hit, and it was just a wonderful time, and I had Dolly running at the same time, so it was a heyday.
As well as Angela Lansbury, you had B. Arthur in the cast, and the fantastic song Bosom Buddies, which is still a hilarious song and makes me laugh every time I hear it, and that's not true of a lot of comic songs.
Well, it was just a joy. B is also a very close friend, and B and Angela have remained close friends. So we always look back at that period with the most affection, and our producers were wonderful, and it was there. I have nothing negative that I could possibly say about the entire Mame experience.
Well, you worked with Angela Lansbury again on your next show, which was Dear World. Now,
Yes.
that didn't receive quite the same critical reception,
No,
but it does
didn't.
have a huge cult following.
Yes, it has a great following. The record album is still being ordered and played, and but it was really an experiment. I wanted, and Angela wanted, to do something different. She had done her high kicks, and she had worn the most stunning wardrobe, and she was ready for a departure, as was I. And I had always loved the Mad Woman of Shiloh, and you can't get further away from Mame than going from anti-Mame to the Mad Woman of Shiloh. And I wrote a score that I'm very proud of, and that was totally different from my previous work. But the critics really did not accept it. They didn't like seeing Angela playing an elderly mad countess, and the audiences really were hostile to everything that we were doing, and it was a major failure, and was very difficult to live through. But once the show closed on Broadway, people started finding the album and listening to it, and my mail doubled or tripled with people saying, why did that show, not find an audience? And I'm still looking toward redoing that, mounting it again, because it has a clearer and more accessible book today. We've been working on it, and I've added a couple of songs that I had originally written and cut from the Broadway production, and it's still alive, and and one day we may see Dear World.
Well, I hope so, because I happen to think it's an excellent score. I'd like to ask you actually a bit about the mechanics of the writing then, because you quite rightly say that you're looking to revise it and you're working on it. It had 59 previews, quite famously, which is a lot, and that must have been extremely grueling for you. But how do you decide when a song needs to be cut or just revised and changed?
Well, I do this with every show. After a certain amount of previews, the creative team meets and discusses how we all feel about the audience reaction we've had to different parts of the show or to the specific songs, and we do work. We go out of town for the purpose of working. And I, for example, knew that I had never addressed the fact that when the Countesses, when the Mad Woman's friends tell her that the world is no longer the lovely place that she perceives it to be, that she has to put her hand up and say, no, I don't want to believe that. It was a very important step in the story that I had neglected to write a song about. And so in Boston, in a hotel room, I wrote, I don't want to know, which, when we put it in the show, stopped the show cold because of Angela's delivery of that song, and really, really strengthened the entire show. So, we kept working on it, and I do that with every show. If there's a weak place in it, whether it's part of the book or part of the score or part of the choreography, we all meet and work.
I believe you're on record as saying that you don't much like the title, Dear World. Are you planning to change that in your revisions?
Well, it's very difficult to change it now, because the people who love the score know it as Dear World, and if it's suddenly called Tomorrow Morning or one of the other lines from the score or from the script, I think it would be very confusing. So I think I'm stuck with that title, but I don't like that title song, and in a new version I would not use that song.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that?
It was written to be sung by a little boy, and so it sounds a little bit like a greeting card.
Funny enough, I always think it sounds a little bit like an ecological anthem.
Maybe because it was attacked when I first presented it to the New York critics. I have a negative feeling about it, but maybe today with the ecological problems of the world, it would make a very strong statement. So maybe I should do some thinking about it myself.
I'd like to move on now to Mack and Mabel, which of course in Britain is hugely popular. And I think when we talk about it, we'll show that it has a longer-term happy ending as a production. But I want to say, why do you think it's so popular here in Britain?
It was because of the wonderful skaters, Torval and Dean. They used the overture from the cast album of Mack and Mabel to skate to when they won their Olympic gold. and the BBC was inundated with calls asking what that music was that they were skating to and where they could buy it. And it caused the record company to re-release the album. And the album actually became very high on the charts in Great Britain. And I suddenly was told here that I had a hit album in London. And your wonderful audiences simply found Mack and Mabel and turned it into a cult hit in London.
I mean, on a personal level, I have to say I think it's one of your most consistently witty scores, both lyrically and musically. And I'd like to ask you a bit about your lyrics, actually. I mean, in that, there's one song in that particularly, Look What's Happened to Mabel. You rhyme meticulous with ridiculous, and then splendidly later on, ambitious, bagels and Canisius, and then finally Saint Aloysius, which is just incredible to me. So what are the secrets of writing a good lyric?
Well, the secret of writing a good lyric is, first of all, knowing how. And don't ask me how I know how.
It helps know how, yeah.
Because if I could tell you how to do it, then you would be able to do it just as well. But the secret is having a wonderful character to work from. And that's really what my shows are about, are the great characters that emerge. You know, writing an anti-love song made I Won't Send Roses one of the most important songs I've ever written. But it was because I needed a song for a man who didn't know how to say I love you. And that was a very tough assignment. And the idea of I won't send roses or hold the door, I won't remember which dress you wore, and then ending with I won't send roses and roses suit you so. That came from having this unusual character to work from and really made me write an interesting song, probably the most interesting love song I've ever written.
Cole Porter quite often used to write his last line first and then work backwards, so he knew it was going to finish well. That song, as you quote so rightly say, has that final line, and roses suit you so, which really gives that song its heart and tells precisely what the character is doing. Would you say that how did you reach that last lyric, that last line?
I went to it immediately. When I got the idea of the first 4 lines, the next thing I wrote was, and roses suit you so. And then I filled in the middle. I really work as if I were doing a jigsaw puzzle. I don't write in order. If you notice, a lot of my closing lines are exclamation points like, there'll be no blue Monday in your Sunday clothes.
Or Dolly will never go away again.
A Dolly will never go away again, exactly. So I do find my, what I call bookends, and very often fill them in.
In your mind, what is the secret to writing a good melody?
Well, what I do is, if I write a new melody, I don't jot it down, I don't put it on tape, I just keep it in my head.
Yeah.
And if it stays in my head for the next week or so, and if it keeps me up at night especially, I feel that I've written a good melody. And I use that very unsophisticated method of deciding whether to keep a melody or not. How it stays in my brain, or sometimes what I thought was a lovely melody, I have trouble finding the next day. And of course I don't go back there. You know.
Of course, you were noted for famously saying at the Tony Awards when you won for the Casual Foal that some people believe that the catchy melody no longer exists on Broadway, but it's alive at the Palace. It's a very interesting thing that the catchy melody is still very, very important for Broadway.
Well, I don't know how important they are today, because Broadway has changed so drastically. We now have what we call jukebox musicals, and they're not original songs at all. You know, the Mamma Mia's, they're wonderful shows and very successful, but it's a different kind of Broadway in a great sense.
I think you've described your shows as your children in many ways, and you sometimes say that Mack and Mabel's your favourite. It certainly is, I think, in Britain. Why is it your favourite?
It's Mack and Mabel. It's still Mack and Mabel. I love La Cage very much, and it's a very, very close second, or maybe in the same category as Mack and Mabel. I love the melodies. I love the lyrics. I think the lyric of A Little More Mascara is one of my very best examples of good internal rhyming and all the things I like about writing lyrics.
Your next major piece, which is the Grand Tour, 1979, with Joel Grey in it. I mean, obviously the 60s have been excellent for you.
Yes.
And the Grand Tour is a very good piece, but I have to say it seems to have been either ignored or critically misunderstood, and indeed many of your things in the 70s seem to have suffered that. There's a song which opens, I think, the Grand Tour, I'll Be Here Tomorrow. Is there any personal significance to that song?
Well, it wasn't when I wrote it. I wrote it to explain the optimism of this little Jewish man who's running from the Nazis. And it was a perfect song for him, and remains a perfect song for him. But after having had 3 shows in the 70s that weren't the monster hits that I was spoiled by and used to, I'll Be Here Tomorrow did become my personal anthem without my realizing.
Moving on once again to a comedy song that you wrote. You wrote, I think, 3 songs for a rather odd little sort of review, I suppose it would be called, A Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine,
yes.
A kind of cod Marx Brothers musical. And there's a song called Just Go to the Movies, which is just a wonderful comic tour de force.
2 very close friends of mine, Alex Cohen, who was the producer of Dear World, and Tommy Toon, who I had been just a personal friend of, both called me from Baltimore, Maryland, and where they had this review trying out. And they said the people who wrote the show have just stopped working on it and didn't know what to do with it, and they felt that it was a potential hit, but that it needed an opening number, and it needed 2 other pieces of material. And would I come to Baltimore to look at it? And I said, I really hate the idea of adding things to other people's shows. It just terrifies me. And they promised me that these gentlemen who had written it would be happy to have me come and take a look. So I got on a train, went to Baltimore, and saw this review, and knew that it needed to tell the audience that the whole first act was going to be about old movies. And I went home, and it was a very happy subject for me to attack. And I went to my piano and wrote that song so quickly, with all the imagery of see Scarlett make a dress out of the drapes, just all the pictures of all our famous films. It was a joy to write, and a very hummable melody, one that still keeps me up at night. And then I wrote 2 other pieces of special material and went back to Baltimore the next week with the 3 songs, and they were put in, and the show came in and was a big hit. And I never liked to do that, but these were 2 people I couldn't say no to because they were friends. And I'm very happy that I got a chance to write, just go to the movies.
And you are in your own right a large movie fan, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to quote a lyric at you, if you don't mind, from that song. And all for the sum of a quarter, life is peachy. You can become Alice Faye or Don Amici. I like that because I know who they all are. But it's the whole song is just a list of good comedy couplets, I think.
Yeah.
Now, you just mentioned jukebox musicals. I don't think this could possibly be described as such. But next you had Jerry's Girls.
Yes, a producer came to me and said, we would like to do a compilation of all your material and honor the fact that in most cases you've written for the female. And it's true. I would much rather write for a lady in a spangled dress than for a man in a brown suit. I've been quoted saying that many times. We put together a show with most of the songs that the ladies had sung in my career, and it was a lovely evening, and has played all over the world, and has played 3 times in Australia to great success. And that was great fun because I got to work with the great Cheetah Rivera and the great Leslie Uggams, who really has one of the finest voices in the musical theater, and the late Dorothy Loudon, who was a wonderful clown, wonderfully funny lady, and a beautiful chorus of pretty girls, and it was a delightful experience.
I'm going to move now on to La Cage aux Folles, of course, which is another monster hit for you, 1983. Arthur Lawrence was the director on that, very, very famous and well-respected director, and he said it was agitprop in sequins. Would you agree with that?
No, I really don't. Arthur was a wonderful part of La Cage. He was is a very powerful force in the theater, and was someone I had always wanted to work with. His book for Gypsy and West Side Story are legendary, and I wanted him to write this musical with me. And what he ended up saying was that he didn't want to write the script, but that he would love to direct it. And so what I was thrilled about was that I got to work with him in an even closer capacity, because he was the man in charge of putting that show on the stage, and he did a stunning job. And together we found Harvey Fierstein, a young, at that time, new playwright who just seemed like the perfect person to join the two of us, and turned out to be that perfect person. And that was a very joyous experience.
If you don't mind me saying, I mean, La Cage aux Folles is really quite an astonishing and brave piece for 1983, which was really a very conservative time in American politics. Did you think at the time it was going to succeed?
I knew that it was controversial, and I knew that I was standing on shaky ground. Actually, for the first time, because everything else I had done, maybe with the exception of Mack and Mabel, was based on a famous piece of work. Even the Grand Tour was based on a very successful play by S.N. Behrman. And I knew that in this case, we were dealing with a subject matter that had not been really seen on the musical stage. I didn't care because I thought it was a wonderful story and a very human story, and I thought it had great family values, because it was about two people who brought up a son to believe in everything that they want him to believe in, and who turned out to be engaged, to find himself engaged to the daughter of the most bigoted man in the country. It became a very, very human family story about how they handled this situation. And the fact that the two people involved were both male made it controversial.
Yes.
And there are people who accepted that, and there are people who will never accept that. But what happened was that the audiences who came into the theater skeptical about seeing a show with boys dressed as girls and kicking their heels left the theater having fallen in love with the two guys, because they were both adorable characters, and without knowing it, they had maybe changed some of their perceptions about gays, and it really ended up being a very important statement. But I want to make it very clear that we didn't write the show to be a militant statement. We wrote it because the French film and play was so charming and so funny and so lovable. And I was just doing my job as a musical playwright, but it turned out to have even greater implications.
Well, it certainly survived its period. I mean, it's still revived and listened to today, and therefore it's sort of not pickled in aspic of 1983.
At the present time, it's playing in so many obscure places in the world. It's playing in Slovakia. I'm not even sure where Slovakia is. But there's a production there. And the world has accepted that, which pleases me, of course, on many levels.
And it's ladled full of comedy as well. I mean, there's a great lyric. It's when they're trying to persuade Alban to be more manly, and you say, or rather, George says, it'll take all your strength and steady nerves for hacking your way through the cherry preserves over breakfast.
I love that, because he's buttering his toast with a very effeminate right hand with his pinky up, and that line is sung by George in his most masculine tones, and I love that line too. You've chosen all the things I really love.
I'm very flattered. But I hope you put all the work in, really, if you don't mind me saying. I'd like to move on now to Mrs. Santa Claus, which has become a Christmas perennial. What are the differences in writing a score for television, because it was a television movie, rather than writing one for the stage?
Well, there was really very little difference in my approach to writing. I don't think that it's as strong a piece of work as I would have written if it had been for the stage. It's not among my favorites.
Oh, that's interesting, because it's on every Christmas, and I was going to say that in many ways you've written the modern equivalent of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, good. I'm glad to know that. It has a wonderful performance by Miss Lansbury.
What was it like working with Angela again?
Oh, it's such a delight. I just don't know how to tell you. She embodies everything that a great star should have. She is loved by the company and by the people that she works with. She's completely willing to try anything that I throw at her. If I ask her to sing something in a different key or learn a new song overnight, she's game. She's just the most professional and darling lady. I could do a whole half hour with you on that lady.
Well, should we just briefly touch then on Miss Spectacular, which I think is a very lively score, obviously a concept album with some really upbeat, great songs, and I'd like to pay particular tribute to Las Vegas, which I have to say, if I was asking somebody to sing a song that was in the style of Sinatra, then that's the piece I'd direct them to.
Yes, it's still waiting for the right theater and the right time, because I only want it to be done in Las Vegas. It was written for that purpose. You know, I've had lots of requests to do it as a as a Broadway musical or as a touring musical. And I've always said no, it really belongs in a nightclub. And we're still waiting to find the right venue. But I enjoyed writing that very, very much. And I like that album. I like the concept of having a different person sing each song. And we selected a cast that we thought would be perfect, and they all said yes. So I ended up with an album that I'm very proud of.
In many ways, that piece, it is about a young lady who sort of lives out her fantasies. And you mention Fantasy Island on land in it, sort of suggesting there's an emptiness of fame. But you've had a tremendously long and distinguished career. How would you sum up your career? Because I'm sure you'll be going into posterity.
I would have to say that I have been blessed because I started out in life by wanting to be an architect, and went to a design school, and just couldn't stop writing songs as a hobby until the day that my mother sent me to Frank Lesser, who changed my direction completely. And it was just a blessing, because you can't imagine how it feels to stand in the back of the theater and hear people humming your melodies on the way out, and being totally anonymous, just standing in the shadows in the back and hearing them hum on the way out. That's the most satisfying part of my life. So I have been blessed.
Certainly.
I'd just like to say, I mean, it's been a real privilege to speak to you, Jerry. I have to say that you've spoken about so many different things and illuminated many areas. I have to say that we're all interested in musical theatre, and you are musical theatre. So on a personal level, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you so much. You're a wonderful interviewer, and you made me say things that I really wanted to say.
You're too kind, but thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Jerry.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow.
What a lovely, lovely man.
What a gracious man. I
He
have
is
to
truly
say.
the nicest man in the world.
He is.
You give him an award for that.
He is regularly described as such in all the articles about him, and I have to say, I think we've just had the proof.
Yes.
But interesting as well, I have to say, there was a lot of stuff there, and we've gone through his entire career.
Well
Fascinating.
done, Thos.
Yes, well, a lot of research for you.
It was a very good interview.
It was the easiest thing in the world, and my thanks really go to Jerry himself,
And your agent and your wife.
who I have yet to meet. And
both of them.
yeah, that's quite. They could be the same person.
Exactly.
But
No, he was splendid.
yet you don't have an agent, and you're interviewing Jerry Herman.
One thing that was very interesting was that he seemed quite reticent about the idea that it was he'd had a political effect, with La Cage aux Folles, and in the way that Arthur Lawrence had described, and yet, presumably it has had quite an effect on social attitudes, or it's changed. People who wouldn't have really engaged with anything dealing with that sort of subject matter might well have,
Stumbled across it
and
found it not too unpleasant. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think he's hiding his light under a bushel to a degree. I think that particular piece will be seen as important. I mean, he's right, though. Of course, on the other hand, it is actually a fantastic story in its own right, very moving, and it's a lovely score, I have to say.
Yeah.
I think it's one of his strongest. I like Mack and Mabel, I like that, and I like Mame. Out of all his stuff, which is all good, those three I just think are brilliant.
It's interesting because he's writing this at the same time as well, La Cage aux Folles, as In Trousers and March of the Falsettos, which were the kind of which were the sort of small, tiny off-Broadway,
Slightly more overt, perhaps.
Yeah, more overt and probably more political actually, but by William Finn. But also, that's kind of the flip side, and he found a way of taking it into the big time, suddenly to do.
Can I just express an apology to our listeners for not being able to get their questions answered by Jerry? The reason for that is because we wanted to generally concentrate on his career,
which is lengthy and excellent.
Yes, I mean, he has been around since 19...
Well, he was born in 1933, and his first off-Broadway show was Parade in 1960.
I think that was a really, really good interview, and congratulations to Thos for coming up with some wonderful questions.
We are hoping, are we not, to do a further programme on Jerry Herman as a retrospective, and...
Yes. So what we are going to ask you to do is head on over to the forums and submit your questions for an episode we're going to do about a sort of retrospect of Jerry Herman.
Yes.
and we
Where
can
we will
discuss.
very, very assiduously read the books.
Yes.
And
Well,
answer
to be
your
honest, we
questions.
know lots of the answers,
Yeah.
and some of them are on the public record. And
Yeah.
so, I think Jerry Herman is a career worth pursuing further. There's a lot of meat left on the bone. His shows are wonderful. He's a wonderful man. So
As we
do
know
write
now.
those questions into the forum or leave them on the voicemail, and we can talk about them on a future show.
And the other thing to say is that next week, I think we'll be hearing from Jen Toxvig, who
Okay.
is who's a writer and of musical theatre in England, particularly. She's also had quite a long career writing musicals, which are often done by schools or done by youth groups and have designed for that purpose. She's with Kathy Shostak. She's written Legacy, which is a musical about Napoleon, and she's coming up. It will be her version of Terry Pratchett's Mort, so she's doing an adaptation of that. So I'll be
Fans
talking to
of
her.
Discworld.
Absolutely. So I will be talking to her at length about that, and also about Mercury Musical Developments, in which she's involved, which is an organisation for new writers of musical theatre.
Do you know, I wish I was a listener to this programme, then I'd be able to hear all these wonderful,
Absolutely.
wonderful interviews. It
Yes.
sounds like a chocolate box. Of
Sorry, Thos, all you get to do is give them. So,
Yes.
didn't anyone say it's better to give than to receive?
That's true. But they will lie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I demand a recount.
So, coming up is all the info on how to get in touch with us here at Musical Talk. Thank you very much for listening to
Yes.
episode number 20, a groundbreaking episode.
And thank you, Jerry Herman.
Thank you very much, Jerry. We'll see you
Thank
next
you,
week.
Jerry.
This has been a production of Musical Talk. If you have any questions or comments, please call the U.S. Musical Talk line on 206-338-6302 or the UK Musical Talk line at 0700 593 0764, or you can email us at musicaltalk@hotmail.co.uk.